regards to conversations that are rotating around autism. In the morning, our conversation was pretty much looking into special needs students and opening up conversations that will enable the government to consider these special persons. Well, next week, that will be Tuesday, immediately after the Easter holiday, a long Easter holiday that will be kicking off on Thursday evening with the Holy Thursday celebrations. By Tuesday, that will be the 2nd of April 2024, we shall be celebrating the World Autism Day. And of course, embrace differences and celebrate uniqueness is what we shall definitely be having in there during the celebrations. And our topic this particular morning is looking at the World Autism Day preparations for 2024 as we welcome, or as we usher you, our viewer, and persons dealing with those autistic individuals, a day that will definitely have them, celebrate and be commemorated in one way or the other. The hashtag is different, not less, for those of you following all of these conversations on the X app, and also hashtag autism acceptancy. So that is where we are having our conversation. For the next minutes of this discussion, we are definitely going to be having our focus on autistic persons and looking at how you, our viewer, can deal with these persons of special need, the autistic persons. Now, besides that, I do have 3 guests with me this morning that are joining me to have a view of how to deal with autistic persons, but then also to usher you into the World Autism Day that will be celebrated next week on Tuesday, 2nd of April. I'll start from the far end, or the far left. I do have Dr. Njuchi Eria Paul. Dr. Njuchi Eria Paul is an independent consultant in disability and inclusion, but pretty much specializing in autism and dyslexia. I've got the word right this time around. A very good morning, Doctor, and many thanks for joining us.
Thank you, Paul. It's a pleasure being here to share with the viewers.
Okay, and the pleasure is mine to be hosting you this morning. Next to Dr. Njuchi Paul is another gentleman, Aloysius Motawe. Aloysius is an occupational therapist and director, Bamboo Kids Center. A very good morning, Aloysius, and many thanks for joining us.
Yes, good morning, Paul. Thank you so much. I'm so happy to be here, and thank you for giving a platform for us to air out on issues about autism. I'm so happy to be here. Thank you.
All right. Indeed, the pleasure is mine to be having you as well. And then lastly, the only lady on the team, and of course, I want to believe we are now including, it's more like we are not gender biased with our conversation this morning. This lady is Dorothy Nambi, the Executive Director of Autism Society Uganda and Donor Center for Autism. A very good morning, ma'am, and many thanks for joining us.
Thank you so much to our viewers and to the host. As us in the autism fraternity,
okay,
we are really so delighted that our day is given that super energy.
All right.
Thank you.
Matters autism. I will definitely kick off with Dr. Njuchi. When you look at autism, what does it mean? What does it mean to be an autistic person, or who is an autistic child, if I'm to put it in that way?
Thank you, Paul. Dear viewers, autism is a complex neurodevelopmental disorder that affects one's communication skills. It affects the social skills. It affects language and language, and in many situations affects in cognitive skills. So a child with autism will have issues interacting with the other adult peers, and will have enormous challenges learning language. Majority of these remain non-verbal, while others may pick language which may not be considered normal, but if early intervention is provided, they may speak, they may have just good enough to survive. Other issues we see, these children and young people are hypersensitive. So they will be hypersensitive. They are sensitive to loud sounds. Others, sight. They may see things that ordinarily we may not see ourselves. And they may have a lot of issues with the touch. And you see these kids not wanting to put on shoes. People may see them as funny. They may put off clothes. They may want to go out just naked, and it may look strange. And given our cultural background, people may say maybe this child, was bewitched or something. But the body is trying to respond to the sense of touch in a different way, in a unique way. So. Yeah, basically, I think this is a common condition today. We see more children coming up, and it is basically, as I said, it is neurodevelopmental. That is a very complex term, maybe to make it simple. The energy within the body doesn't move the way other children would behave. Okay. So, yes, please.
Dr. Quickwood, let's get it, let's go local a bit.
Yeah.
For someone out there who is a new mother or a new parent who has no idea about autism, how can they easily tell that I've given birth to an autistic child?
There are very early indicators. One of them is the inability to smile back to mom. These kids look flat. You may come up, the child, as you are breastfeeding, usually you look at our babies, and when you smile, babies smile back. But for kids with the autism, they will not give back the right response. They will be aloof.
They won't even cry.
Cry. They may cry. They may overcry.
Okay.
Yeah, that will be another indicator. And you may look around. There is no stimuli that has caused that. So I think as parents, we need to be very sensitive. At least we know all kids should be able to speak at least 10 to 15 words by their first birthday. But if a child is not speaking at all by 1 year, you should be concerned about this. It's not true that it is only autism that will stop the child from developing a normal speech, but it is one of the causes. So we need to see this. But attachment, bonding will be different.
All right. Let me get to Aloysius real fast. Aloysius, when you look at the World Autism Day, to you, what does it mean as someone who has been dealing with these, children or these persons? I don't even know how long you've actually been doing this particular, duty as well. I think you can further give the viewer more details of that. But I need to know, to you, what does Autism Day represent?
Okay, thank you so much, Paul. As an occupational therapist, serving in this field the last 8 years, specifically working with children with autism in a pediatric range, I look at autism, World Autism Day as an opportunity and a platform for us to extend all the information back there to the public about autism. Now, I have to tell you this, Paul, one of the challenges that we are currently finding is how much people know about this condition, how much people know about the disorder. There are very many parents out there having these children in the villages. They do not know what is happening with their children. They do not know what to do with their children. Some of them do not even know something can be done to have these children get more functional, independent, and productive in their advanced stages of life. So I look at World Autism Day as an opportunity for us and other stakeholders in this out there to reach out to the general public and extend the information about autism to them.
Okay, and we all know that mothers are nurturers. Dorothy here is a lady. And you know why I'm actually bringing this question to you, ma'am, is when you realize most of the times many parents fail at the get-go after giving birth to the autistic children. Many are left worried and at times even depressed. But in a situation where you are a mother and or let's say a viewer out there who's dealing with an autistic child, how do they cope up with this kind of situation? Which message can you give to them to deal with these autistic children?
Well, thank you so much once again for this opportunity. As a mother, I would actually just encourage my fellow colleagues in the field that the moment you have this kind of a child, do not give up. You need to keep the journey. Where you have to spend more 30 minutes teaching your child how to go about some milestones, please do it. We've seen mothers leaving this kind of a task to maids or to the caretakers. They need to be part of this movement. They need to be part of this journey. This is normally what I would encourage my fellow colleagues, that if it happens, you're not to be blamed. It's not a curse, and this is not the end of the road.
Okay.
So my word of encouragement is keep persevering. Love your children, accept them and support them.
Okay, let me get to Aloysius. When you look at what we have here is embrace differences and celebrate uniqueness. How do we embrace the differences? Because autistic persons or autistic children are people with special needs or that need special needs. How do we embrace these differences that we have? For instance, in a situation where we want to be inclusive, we want to promote inclusivity. How do we embrace these differences?
Well, thank you. So when you look at this, embracing differences, first of all, we need to understand that these children and other persons out there with autism are just different, They are not abnormal as some people state it, they are just different. So we have to acknowledge that they have the capacity to learn, be productive in life, and contribute to the developmental activities of our societies. So when we accept that, it is upon us to include them, to have them a comparable opportunity to participate in all developmental activities of the society and all that. So embracing the differences means let's look at them as people with potential to learn, be productive, and let's give them opportunity to participate in all activities that we do.
Okay, and getting back to Dr. Njuchi. Doctor, we have so many of these children, by the way, as of today. And I love the fact that you've, shared, incidences where in an African situation or setting, many of us would ideally point this to witchcraft in any scenario, in a given scenario. Back in the time, it is after a generation that has actually grown up with information that people get to know that these things happen not only in Uganda, but world over. So how do we deal with these sort of myths? Because in a society like this, these are reasons as to why certain people end up, discriminating these children, and then others even end up divorcing their wives over such issues. How do we deal with such circumstances?
Thank you, Paul, for this. And dear viewers, it is true, as Paul has stated it, autism is one of the number one causes of family discourse. We see many parents, when I run a school for kids with where kids with autism attend, but sometimes it is rare to see both parents come together. You see one of them, which means that there is some issue at home. It is true in the African setting, because we lack information. Before, many years ago, for me, I've spent 37 years in this field, supporting children with different developmental disabilities. And what I see, wherever a problem is not known, people relate it to witchcraft, which is a myth. And you see many societies that are not developed, villages that are not developed, you see many shrines. Why? Because there are no clinics. Immediately clinics begin emerging, the shrines shrink. You don't see them anymore. And you just ask what has happened. The same with the autism. Autism before, many years ago when I did special needs education as a pioneer special needs teacher, even there was no mention about this word. And barely these children were not attending school because teachers didn't know what to do. But now science has developed, information is available, and parents are beginning to open up, like this talk we are on. I'm sure after this we may receive many parents who have been hiding their children calling. And that is the essence of the World Autism Day, to increase awareness. So I'm sure when information is available, we demystify some of these myths that have been going on. Now we know a child with autism can do ABCD. Like in my setting, we see many of them, they become great painters because they love repetitive tasks. So when you give them a brush to paint, they are wonderful. If you give them something to cut, because it goes back and forth, they love that. So we as teachers and parents, when you see a child doing something, pick interest in it. Maybe that is a God-given talent that you need to harness for the child to be successful. And I'm sure if society opens up to this, all children can be included in societies and they can become productive members of society. It's no longer bewitching, but it is just lack of information. And when information is available, the gap is bridged. Thank
because
you,
this
Paul.
is a topic that is talking matters inclusivity. I wish I get some comments and views from some of our viewers out there on how to deal with autistic children. I'm already receiving some that are requesting for the contacts of the people on here. Of course, I will be sharing their contacts as we are winding up with the show later on, and also to give you more in regards to how you can deal with these specific children in case you have one. Let's talk matters empowerment of these particular children. I'll start with you, Ms. Dorothy. How do we empower, parents, and then two, schools and the society to deal with autistic children?
Well, I think when it comes to empowerment, as Dr. Eria Paul Njuchi has said, it starts like with the parents. When you have this child, what next? Right now we are lucky. We have people who have come out to understand our children, and now there are schools, there are centers. There are even some schools that are empowering our children in the sectors of that nature. So when we empower them, means we shall have people who are of value in our community. If it is empowering the parent, when maybe let's say the father has gone away, and then this mother keeps on the journey to, I'll not give up, it means I'll have to work and support my child, then this is what we are calling for.
Okay, and let's get into Aloysius here. Do we have enough resources though, Aloysius? I think for you as someone who is also actively in a center where you're dealing with these children from a school level, I need to understand, do we have enough support centers or support systems as a country to help autistic children?
Thank you, dear viewers. It's unfortunately that we are absolutely running all the services we can within a very low resource basket. Okay. We do not have resources at all. I understand there are very many efforts from private institutions, non-government organizations and all that. Very many have really come up to support this work. But as the government, I think it still comes back to us, the stakeholders, to keep pushing the government, all the people in line with provision of the required resources, and advocate for what these children really need to survive. But definitely we are not having the resources.
Oh, resources and resources. Let me get back to Dr. Njuchi, matters to do with practical steps for inclusion. When you look at our society today, conversations like having persons with disability within society is still a very huge hurdle for us. But let's get into the practical bit. How practical, or how best can we get practical on dealing with autistic children?
Thank you, Paul, and dear viewers. I think the very first step is popularizing assessment services. These children need to be identified early. If you don't know Paul, you will not be able to help Paul. The first step is getting to know these children. Because it is possible to mix up issues. Children who are deaf, those who don't hear, may behave pretty the same way as autistic children. Why? When it comes to verbal communication. A child who doesn't hear at all will not speak, and a child who is autistic, if he was impacted heavily, will not be able to speak. But we need to prepare professionals with the skills of identifying and assessing these children. Because autism is not like one group, it's not heterogeneous, it is, it's not homogeneous, it is heterogeneous, meaning it's not one group. When you find two groups, two children with autism, they are very different from one another. So for that matter, we need, the first step is preparing staff, professionals, to be able to identify and assess. That is step one. Secondly, is to give information to the parents about available resources for them. There is a school in a particular, but with inclusion, we presuppose that the nearest school to the child should be the one where the child goes. So kindergarten teachers, we have never taken a deliberate effort. I think kindergarten teachers are so critical because this is where most of the skills are emerging. Every preschool teacher should know about autism. And we are calling upon stakeholders, partners, to spend money. I think we see a lot of money being spent in primary schools. To some kids, that is a little bit too late. So we need to set the foundations right. So teacher education needs to be improved in this country. We need to make sure that every teacher that goes out of a college is familiar with autism. Because these kids also need to have lifelong learning, they need to be productive. Higher education, they can succeed, go to colleges, go to technical schools and do what they have to do. And I want to call upon government really to speed up the policy on special needs education. It is almost there. We want to appreciate the efforts, but without a deliberate policy, our kids with autism, when resources are scarce, Paul, you realize that we go on survival for the fittest.
True.
It is only those bright ones that get the scholarships. I have not seen a scholarship for kids with the autism. So I think we need to be a little bit more open with the information available, make sure that structures are inclusive at every level. These kids should be looked for. A head teacher should be deliberate to say, among these kids I've enrolled, where is one with autism? Maybe what I didn't mention in the beginning, autism is not only one type. We have got high functioning autism, which is Asperger's syndrome. These people can study up to PhD. They have autism, they have got sensory issues, and they are not social, but they are very brilliant, very intelligent, and they are wonderful when it comes to ICT, when it comes to exterior design, interior design. The only difficulty will be that they will not be in a group. They will isolate themselves. He will be a gentleman, but he will not welcome visitors. These are scenarios we see. Every company has individuals like these, but we call them low impact. They have been impacted at a lower level. So colleagues, dear viewers and team here, I think the steps are that we need to provide information to the parents. We need to set up structures for identification and assessment. We need to improve our teacher education system. And the worst one is the examination system. Because examination system doesn't take care of children who don't have a language, for example.
Okay.
Yeah. So once examination is free, each person is tested according to his individual needs, then everyone will progress.
Aloysius, for the teachers, how can the teachers deal with these children? Because you realize not so many education facilities in Uganda are employing teachers who know how to deal with autistic children or autistic students. Because for you, you know how to handle them. Now, in a situation whereby this teacher has no knowledge whatsoever and the school has no capacity to employ, because these are things that are happening, how can the teachers deal with these children?
Well, first of all, I have to say this should be addressed systemically.
Okay.
First of all, the teachers really need to be equipped with the knowledge to identify, to understand who a child with autism is. How do they present? So I really think I would suggest that if the systems can be adjusted and it is accommodated within the curriculum, of training these teachers back at their training institutions, because, well, it's these teachers that interact with the children on a daily basis. You realize that sometimes they even spend with the children more time than their actual parents. So I feel like it is very important that these teachers are equipped with the knowledge to understand these children, identify the symptoms of that condition, and then they can definitely report. You realize us who are on this other side of the medical interventions and treatment of this condition, sometimes by the time you receive this child, most of the presentation, how the child is presenting at that time, you realize many of them, maybe the child would have even outgrown some time back, but because they did not identify that child earlier. So the issues with early identification, and the teachers really need to be equipped with knowledge of what the condition is. They should be identifiers back from their training institution. I feel like that should be included within their training curriculum.
Well, to our dear viewer, next week when Uganda joins the rest of the world to commemorate World Autism Day, the theme will be From Awareness to Action, Practical Steps for Inclusion. Practical is the catchword there for me. Practical steps for inclusion. Ms. Dorothy, which practical steps for inclusion can we take as a country? Let's now drive the basket away from the government, because looking at it from an angle of dealing with these persons, you do realize that we deal with them on a single or on a daily basis. And if I, Sonko, were to meet an autistic child today or an autistic person, how do I deal with them? How do I, relate with them?
Well, thank you so much. You're trying to say don't go back to the government, but I would say I would want to go back to the government.
Okay, no problem.
Because that is where we start from.
Okay.
That's where we have the resource that we need to go practical.
Okay.
I'm a special needs teacher and also an old student of YMCA Comprehensive Institute.
Okay.
Currently, my colleague has just talked of empowering teachers, because when we empower them, then they will have the practical part of what we really want to see. So if every teacher is empowered, starting from the early childhood level, means then our children are going to go into that world of physically, maybe managing themselves.
Okay.
Because if you can't manage yourself, then you can't survive. So when we say government, we still call on government in different areas. When it comes to the curriculum, the government has to mind there are these other people who may not really maybe perform the way an ordinary person may perform. But how is the curriculum like? Is it friendly to this person? If it is friendly, then we can live a model life. Then we can live an ordinary life. Then it means we are balancing the boat.
Okay. My next concern will be open to all of you. When you look at, learning tools, I've seen persons with disability, the conversations around learning tools. Are there specific equipment or tools that are very common for all autistic children, that if a parent is taking their child to this school and they're autistic, what tools are they supposed to be able to afford that will be helpful in the upbringing and the skilling up of this child? Are there specific ones?
Basically, I think learning should be taken naturally.
Okay.
Because you are going to solve natural problems. But I think in the area, since we have said these guys are so gifted with visuals, they are visual learners. Their visual intelligence is slightly higher.
Okay.
They are great with the ICT, information communication technology. And
does it apply to all of them or the majority?
The majority of them.
Okay.
The majority of them really are keen when it comes to ICT. When they have, when they can see a password from really a distance, they can, what you can't ordinarily, for them they can see. If something, a pin is lost, for example, in the field, they will be the first to see it. So really they have got, even some of them have got exceptional abilities that we have never utilized. So what we are advocating, government, I think, should waive, I think, by law, or technology that is meant for kids with autism. At basic levels, even toys, there are toys that can stimulate language, which are manufactured abroad, not here. So if, for example, a company or a school has identified a partner, maybe abroad, and they are willing to share their resources, I think government should take a deliberate policy. We should have a deliberate policy that everything coming to support a child, a student, or a learner with autism or any other disability should be tax-free.
Okay.
Yes, I think this is...
yes, you can add something.
Actually, when Doctor has mentioned something to do with the learning tools, as Donor Center, we've realized our children are really perfect in music. And there's just one big challenge. Sometimes when I listen, I even want to burst out and cry. We have our friends in England who have a container of musical instruments seated somewhere, but then the tax is very high. So they had to put things somewhere in a garage until when the tax is able to be deducted, and maybe they can come. So back to the government. If these learning tools are there, means that we have well-wishers who can donate, and then when it comes to the tax, it should really be down. Okay. So that means these resources will come, and all our various children, wherever they are, can have this. You imagine buying a trumpet from one of the music centers here. It's very expensive. But then someone has donated it. But then bringing it freely becomes a problem. We will still ask government, the revenue authority, that if something has been verified and specifically for these learners, maybe with autism, I'll really talk autism, it should be tax exempted.
Okay.
Okay, Paul, I think on this, I would go a little bit technical.
Okay.
Now, as a therapist, I would like to take you back on the actual understanding of autism. We are actually only concentrating on the word autism, but this is a spectrum.
Yeah.
Autism spectrum disorder.
Yeah.
The name spectrum came into the picture because of the variation of its symptoms and the severity. So you realize that they will tell you child A has autism, child B has autism, but they present differently.
Yeah.
So that difference in their presentation calls for specific and standardized procedures of training them. Coming back to your question of the tools, definitely there are tools that are required to train and teach these children. First of all, training them, rehabilitating them, nurturing them is more of a multidisciplinary kind of role. It is not going to be one discipline. Yeah. You realize it requires an occupational therapist, a speech and language therapist, a special needs teacher is here. It is a team. So you realize each discipline along that team has their own role to play. And as a group, whatever you contribute, the child will come out. So these children require those tools. The question still comes back, as Dorothy has been saying, are those tools there? Who is supposed to provide them? But they definitely need them. For the fact that the condition, first of all, is a little bit sophisticated. It is rare, and each child presents differently. At some point, you realize that even those few schools that have accepted to accommodate them, a child learns individually, because each child has their own learning challenges. So every child will learn as an individual. So they definitely require the tools.
Okay. And of course, the tax exemption bit of it is what Ms. Dorothy has mentioned here, saying that if we want to have these children supported, then these taxes really need to be checked on a little bit. Let me get back to Dr. Njuchi. Doctor, I want to take this conversation deep to parenting.
Yeah.
Why? At times, parents leave this to the teachers to do everything for them, and they never take the chance to understand their children.
Yeah.
What can parents do to be part of the lives of their children? Because like I did mention, at the get-go, some of the parents are depressed.
Yeah, true.
Many are worried about the future of their parenthood.
Yeah.
Others are even scared of giving birth
Yeah.
to other babies.
Yeah.
And the cycle continues.
Yeah.
But after giving birth to a child that needs, you know, this specific attention, or a special needs child,
Yeah.
and in context here is autism, how can the parents deal with this child? How can they grow and nurture and groom this child with love without trying to, you know, get worried about the fact that this is how their child is growing up?
Okay. Thank you, Paul. And dear viewers, as a basic principle, children are gifts of love given to us by God. And within each child is a hidden treasure. You never know why God has intentioned to create a child of that type. Probably we didn't dig into the causes, but at this level, we are no longer interested in the causes, but the child is autistic. So we need to deal with it the way it is. Parents, first of all, as we said, they need information. They need to be supported to know that this is not a disaster. This is not because we don't blame them for what happened, but we deal with the situation that is. So first of all, acceptance. And the other, no comparing. Immediately begin comparing this child with the other, you are losing the battle. They should see that child as unique, as a unique gift. You know, when, for example, people on a wedding, they give you different gifts. Another one will give you a glass, another one will give you whatever, but all are gifts.
True.
So if you look at these children as a special gift, and you need to do extra, some kids will need extra energy, extra resources. What we didn't mention because of time is that these children are so picky when it comes to food because of their health issues. Their metabolism, the way they process food.
Okay.
They are hypersensitive. They may not like certain foods.
Okay.
So as a parent, you need to prepare. You can't say, because this is the only portion we have, one child will not eat it.
Okay.
So we need to begin from day one to see, this child is going to be special. The clothes the child will wear may be different.
On that note, sorry to cut you short. Food. You've mentioned food.
Yes.
Very interesting topic there.
Yeah.
Are there specific foods? Because you've mentioned they are picky.
Yeah.
So that means they may not be able to eat everything that you offer to them.
Yes, exactly.
When, in terms of, let's say, you know, food types, carbohydrates, proteins, what do they need majorly for their bodies?
As we said, every child will be different from the other.
Oh.
But mainstream.
Okay.
These children need, may detest certain foods because of the taste of the food itself.
Oh.
Because culturally, like I come from Masaka, I'm a Matoke eater. But another person coming from another land may eat kalo. So I think we have a divide, but in every setting, in every culture, kids will like certain things and will hate others. What we need is a flexibility. And I think this is the whole essence of a buffet. Buffet doesn't mean that you have to eat everything. It is meant to provide opportunities to pick what you want and leave what you can't.
Okay.
So government, I think we have to be intentional to support these families that have children with autism, because it is very expensive to raise a child with autism.
Oh, okay.
Think about food itself alone. You spend more.
Because I was coming to that element of expenses. Aloysius, you do have something to say.
Yes, about the question of foods, I will still come in a little bit technical as an occupational therapist. The question about food, now, you only asked about which foods they should eat, but medically, there is clinical evidence. The research has it that some food substances that contain gluten, specifically gluten, are contraindicated to these children because, as he said, a number of them are hyperactive.
Gluten, break it down for my viewer in Buyikwe, in Kiriadongo.
Now,
which foods
gluten,
are those?
To break it down, gluten is a nutrient that is most commonly found in most of the cereal foods, talk of wheat.
Okay.
And you realize most of the food products that we have on market
are wheat.
Exactly.
Yes,
exactly. So you realize that, as I said, there is clinical evidence that gluten as a substance, it has a contribution to the increase in the energy levels of the child. And in most cases, once you give the child any gluten substance, give the child bread. who is already hyper, they will become hyper twice because their energy levels are already hitting the high bars. So some of these children, just like I mentioned earlier, they could be different. You can meet a child with autism who is not hyper, but specifically to those who are hyperactive, they are contraindicated to the gluten substance foods.
Well, I need to understand, is being short-tempered amongst the children, is it part of the symptoms of an autistic child? Or is it part of the character trait?
Yes, part of the character traits, Paul and the viewers. I think these children have issues with the mood changes.
Okay.
They may cry for no reason. They may laugh for no reason. So emotionally, I think there are blocks. We have recently done, these days we want to popularize a treatment that has proved very effective, which is Eastern based. You know, in the past we used the Western treatments. We have got Qigong massage. The Chinese have gone a step further from the West, and they believe there are three important factors if you are dealing with a person with autism. One, a human being, to be well, you need fresh air.
Okay.
That's why pollution should be fought in all its dimensions. Because pollutants, I think, have got issues. If you have got the bad air, it is going to have issues. Then food, good food. But you know, we do what we call quick food, over-processed foods, as he was talking about wheat. These are food that should be avoided. And exercise. You know, these days, people don't want to exercise. Children are on ICT machines, they are on iPads, they are on computers, on televisions. I think this is, the energy is blocked.
Okay.
So I think we need to open up. Maybe this will be another conversation.
Yes.
But I think it is therapy that we have seen that has helped many children. If you do, you don't need a speech therapist, you don't need an OT. It is all in one.
All right.
Yeah.
My last question is coming in from a viewer. From Namasoba. Lawrence is saying, are there any specific programs in the country aimed at prevention of this? Are there?
First of all, to understand what could prevent, you need to first understand what the cause is. You can't prevent what you don't know.
Okay.
We did not discuss the causative factors of autism. Unfortunately, there is no identified cause of autism.
Okay.
You will not find it. Research only has it that genetic and environmental factors will contribute to risk of getting autism. These are some of the factors that you cannot avoid, you cannot prevent, so it is not that easy.
Okay. And of course, next week will be World Autism Day. I'm running out of time. Let me get back to my guests this morning. I'll start from Dr. Njuchi. Next week is the World Autism Day. In a minute, what do you expect? And moving forward, what should be done?
What we expect is people partnering with us, joining us in this campaign of raising awareness about people with autism. Okay. And we use that information as a tool, as a preventive tool, because once you know, that is one step in the direction of preventing autism and improving the quality of life for affected people. So that is very critical. Be part of it. If there will be flyers, there will be media. If it is reading, share with a friend, share with a relative about autism. By doing this, you know, we are moving forward.
All right. And away from that, let me get to Aloysius in your parting shots. Next week will be World Autism Day. What should we highly expect, and what would be your recommendations to the government and various stakeholders? Okay.
One, my expectations, I really expect at the end of this day for the public, the world out there to know these children exist and something can be done to have them independency and productivity in their lives too. My cry to the government is to interest this case of autism with themselves at the policy level, have them accommodated within the streamlining of the policies, and at least extend the resources these children require. At least to reduce on the expenses of the parents.
All right. And now lastly, let me get to Dorothy Nambi. What would be your recommendations to the government as we commemorate World Autism Day next week? In a minute.
Thank you so much. As Miss Dorothy, the ED Autism Society Uganda, we are really calling on different partners to come and join us, because the moment we really recognize that these children are international, they are all over the world, then our government that hasn't yet realized this is a very big problem will come in to see the gaps and stand with us. So we call upon everyone to join us at Katikati. We shall have a walk led by a band from Brussels, Africa, and then we would really want more people to join. There are flyers going on our social media platforms. Follow us, and then you can get more to us and then see how we can embrace the differences and show love to our children living with autism.
Well, and the theme for this year's World Autism Day celebrations is From Awareness to Action, Practical Steps for Inclusion. And there you have it. That has been our conversation this morning, looking deep into the World Autism Day that is coming up next week. My guest this morning, if I am to remind you, I've been having Aloysius Motawe, an occupational therapist and director, Bamboo Kids Center. Many thanks for joining us once again, good sir. And then also Dr. Njuchi Area Paul, who is an independent consultant in disability and inclusion, specializing in autism and dyslexia. And then Dorothy Nambi, the lady on the panel this morning, the executive director of Autism Society Uganda and Donor Center for Autism, as well, as we are looking at happy World Autism Day for 2024, embracing differences and celebrating uniqueness. I'm Joram Paul Sonko. For all of you who have been part of us since the time we started with Good Morning Uganda at 6:30 a.m. We shall do this same time tomorrow. Have yourselves a good day, a blessed one at it. Till tomorrow. Bye.
Live